Okay, so today I'll talk a little bit about what mindfulness is, as well as kind of the latest evidence or what is known with the research on the benefits of mindfulness. And then I'll give you a brief overview of all of our short programs. And then specifically, I'll talk about one of the most common questions we get is what's the difference between mindfulness-based stress reduction or MBSR and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT. So I'll touch upon that. We have a course called Finding Peace in a Frantic World. And then we also have a 8-week program called Mindfulness-Based Blood Pressure Reduction or MBBP. That's focused on heart health. And as I mentioned, I also will briefly touch upon some of our teacher training pathways, but it won't be the focus for today's session. And I'll give you the details on the upcoming classes, the schedules, and how to register as well. So today's session is being recorded, so don't feel like you have to take too many detailed notes. We will be sending a link to that recording later on, including it'll display the slides with the schedules and the details as well. So I also will briefly mention a little bit about our custom programming, and we also have a number of free offerings, including a mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction masterclass seminar today at noon with the creator of that program. And I can share a link to the registration for that. It hasn't closed yet. So if you're interested in that program and want to hear more about that topic, you'd be welcome to join us today. Okay, so before I jump into the programs themselves, I like to start off with kind of what mindfulness is and why it matters. And so it should come as no surprise that the current landscape that we're living in is really not without its challenges. There's an enormous amount of stress, burnout, and exhaustion is really pervasive. With one recent survey revealing that 77% of workers experience work-related stress in the past month, and 57% reported negative impacts such as emotional exhaustion and decreased motivation. And it's really not just that. Our ability to actually focus has declined significantly in the past few decades, with distractions abounding. So according to data put out by the University of California, the average worker checks their email 74 times a day, toggles between digital screens an average of 566 times a day, and goes on social media around 21 different times a day. And that data is actually from 2014, so it's more than a decade old, and it has only gone up since then. Actually, let me go back real quick. Yeah, I mean, so beyond just the stress and distraction, we really are a society that continues to struggle incredibly with mental and physical health. According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, approximately 1 in 5 adults, US adults, experience mental illness each year, with 1 in 20 experiencing serious mental illness. Globally, 27% of adults and over 80% of adolescents do not meet the World Health Organization's recommendation levels of physical activity, and chronic disease is really pervasive in largely developed nations. A recent Market Watch report noted that the US has reached its lowest rank of 24th on the global happiness scale, and that data just came out this year. So, I mean, people are hurting. These realities undoubtedly take a toll on us as individuals, but they also really have broader impacts on our communities and our society and the organizations in which we work. And they really impact and reflect the underlying culture of our national and global societies. And so we as individuals and societies really can't afford not to do something about this situation. So here at Brown, we do believe that mindfulness is not just a practice, it's really rather an innate skill that we're all born with that can be harnessed and strengthened, just like you would go to the gym to work out your muscles. You can actually practice the techniques that mindfulness, and it will, the evidence suggests and shows that you can actually, through that training, strengthen your ability to focus, but as well as a number of other things. Okay, so a bit about how it works and what it is. So this is a really probably the most common definition of mindfulness, and it is a definition put out there by John Kabat-Zinn, who is the creator of mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR. And John defines mindfulness as the awareness that arises when paying attention in a particular way on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, or as my colleague likes to say, with friendliness. But I also like to share this slide. Mindfulness has been around for a while, and it's really kind of has a lot of hype around it. And so when it first kind of came to Western societies in a more secular way, uh, there there was the start of it was becoming more popular, but there was also a rise in the amount of research that was being done about it. And so a group of scientists and clinical psychologists got together in the early 2000s, right as it was really taking off. And they said, it's here to stay. So we really need to be intentional about setting what they call an operational definition of what mindfulness is. That way, when research is conducted, it's standardized. And so what I love about this, though, and I won't read it all, but it's how nicely it actually maps to John's definition. And so with their definition, there's really two components to mindfulness. So the first is it involves this aspect of being able to train your mind to be able to pay attention to the present moment. So whether that's focusing on your breath or focusing on kind of on something outside, external to yourself, um, it's this training, it's this intentional training of being able, as your mind wanders, bring it back. And in doing so, the thought is that you can actually strengthen your ability to stay focused, which has obviously great implications for when you're going about your daily life, that you can actually sit and focus, give the person you're talking to your full attention, or if you're doing a task at work, be able to sit and not get distracted by things around you and produce higher quality work in doing so. And so the second component to mindfulness actually involves more of the way your posture towards the world is, and to the data that's coming in through your thoughts, your feelings, your bodily senses. And so it's this posture of curiosity, openness, and acceptance, kind of what we call more of an open posture. And in contrast, if you've ever experienced it, kind of more of a closed, judgmental, defensive, reactive posture is kind of the default mode for us a lot of times, particularly when we're under a lot of stress. And so this is a theoretical framework that scientists like to use and when they're conducting research, kind of just demonstrating the different ways that mindfulness actually might be effective and the mechanisms for how it works. And so I'll kind of walk through each of them. But yeah, based on decades of research, including several recent studies that involve neural imaging, it's thought that mindfulness meditation works through three primary pathways. So you've got attention control, which is simply that, the ability to be able to focus our attention on a task at hand for sustained periods of time. And then the second would be emotional regulation. And so this speaks not to the ability to actually control our emotions necessarily, but rather the ability to actually be able to sit with any emotion that arises. So as humans, we're hardwired to detect potential threats and to seek out rewards, which is fine. However, we don't always do a very good job at interpreting these emotional signals. And so we become reactive in a way that's actually not best serving us well. And so by training our bodies and minds to actually be able to sit with discomfort or sit with emotions that we might not necessarily like, it actually allows us to be able to let the emotions come and go. No emotion lasts forever. And so in turn, we can then be able to grow in our ability to have more conscious control over our actions, and so we become less reactive and we have more control over how we actually want to respond in situations, so we can respond out of our core sense of like values and our intentions rather than being reactive. And then lastly, self-awareness speaks to our ability to check in with our thoughts, our feelings, and our bodily sensations as they arise. in a way that really allows us to harness data on what is unfolding in the present moment. So if you think about all this input coming in to our consciousness, so in practicing and growing in self-awareness, you actually become more aware of what that data is and kind of parse through some of the biases and misperceptions we might have so that you really can kind of see things a little bit more clearly. So it allows us to know and understand ourselves better, so that we can be more attuned to what our actual needs are, and so that we can more effectively and consciously respond to situations as they arise. And I love this graph. It needs to be updated, but it is from an article that was published in 2021, and it shows the number of peer-reviewed research articles on the mindfulness, and it's mapped over time. So you can see at the start, with the creation of mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, in 1979, since then it's really just started to tick up, particularly around the 2000s when that operational definition was created. So the research has gone up, and if you were to map this out to today's date, it would just continue to go up. And so the red line is showing like literature reviews, so which is actually synthesizing data. And so those are actually very, very powerful because it takes, it allows you to kind of compare apples to oranges with different research studies and then look at it and in a systematic way, actually analyze what the net results are between those. And so that's kind of more recently, that's where, since there is so much research out there, that's where the focus has been a lot of times. Okay. So this shouldn't come as any surprise, but mindfulness, with all of that research, mindfulness has been shown to have a number of health benefits across a wide range of health outcomes. So including the management of chronic and acute pain. And that is actually kind of where MBSR first got its roots, was with the ability to assist people who are struggling with chronic pain. So there's been a number of studies that suggest MBSR may reduce pain-related distress, pain intensity, and the functional limitations in people with chronic pain. And there's some evidence that mindfulness can also help reduce what experts called pain catastrophizing. And so what that kind of speaks to is with chronic pain, but also with like anxiety or depression, there's the initial discomfort or pain or impact that that pain has, but that there's a second layer to it. So you get the pain itself, but then there's this emotional anxiety that comes with dealing with chronic pain, whether that's you're thinking about going to a friend's house or a party and you are worried that you're not sure you're going to be able to actually engage and interact with your friends because of your chronic pain, or you're going to have to leave early because of it. So there's that extra layer that is particularly problematic, and it really impacts people's quality of life. And so there's evidence that mindfulness not only helps with the pain itself, but also with that second layer of being able to help shift your relationship to your pain and be able to actually live and increase your quality of life in living with it. As you can imagine, there's strong evidence that MBSR reduces stress and also directly helps with exhaustion and burnout, which are significant health concerns among workers really globally, across people of all ages and backgrounds. Mindfulness can also help people with anxiety and depression by training them to remain in the present moment. So if you've ever struggled with anxiety or depression or any difficult mood states, you know that a lot of your energy is consumed in either worrying about the past, things that you wish you'd done differently, or ruminating about the past, or worrying about the future. And so a lot of the work that can be done with mindfulness is in you're training yourself to be more grounded and present in the actual present moment. There, it kind of rewires your brain so you're not spending as much time, you're not traveling those well-worn neural pathways of particular thoughts or feelings that are taking you out of the present moment. There has been, there was a 2015 trial and then a more recent research study, a clinical trial that found that MBSR was as effective as antidepressants for treating depression from recurring, which is quite something. Mindfulness has also been shown to have significant improvements in sleep quality and even a reduction in blood pressure among those with uncontrolled hypertension, which is something I'll talk about with the mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program. And then lastly, mindfulness is also renowned for its cognitive, emotional, and physiological outcomes, including increases in self-compassion, boosts to working memory, increased ability to focus, and improvements in the ability to regulate and control emotions. All right, so a bit about our programs. So if you visit our website, you will see that we offer a number of short 8-week mindfulness-based programs. They are all designed to begin the cultivation of mindfulness skills and competencies, but they are also um, classes that you can take if you've already taken a program. We have people that take them over and over again because they really, the curriculum is such that you can engage with it no matter what you have going on in your life. You'll get something a little bit different. Um, and so, for example, so I'll go through each program kind of briefly, and then I'll get into the details of of all of them. So we have the mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, as well as we have 3 different adaptation of MBSR. So first is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT. We have a course called Finding Peace in a Frantic World, and then also mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction, or MBBP. So I'll talk about each of those. But I also like to point out is that here at Brown, all of our classes are grounded in evidence-based practices. So one of the strengths of our programming is our partnership with the Mindfulness Center over at the Brown School of Public Health. It's a world-renowned research center conducting mindfulness research. And so the director over there, Eric Laux, he actually serves as our academic director for our non-degree and certificate programs that we offer here at School of Professional Studies. And so we just like to make sure that we're staying on top of the research, and actually that we're also able to highlight and showcase a lot of the research in our classes themselves. Most of the classes are taught online. However, we do occasionally offer some in-person programming as well as hybrid options. So we are offering an in-person MBSR class this fall. So if you live local to Rhode Island and are interested in that experience, I can give you more details on that as well. Okay, so I'm going to start off with MBSR. It's considered the gold standard for mindfulness-based programs, and it was first created in 1979 by John Kabat-Zinn at UMass Medical Center. So John was actually a microbiologist and clinician by training. He went to MIT. And so he found himself at UMass Medical Center, and he was working there and had a lot of contact and with the physicians working there. And he was talking with them and asked them, what percent of your patients do you think that you are actually able to help? And it was interesting because as great as Western medicine is, there is a pretty significant portion of patients that, Western medicine can only do so much for. And particularly, as I alluded to before, individuals struggling with chronic pain, often it's hard to parse out what is causing the pain. And even if you know what's causing the pain, you can't always fix it. And so John had a background in Eastern meditative practices. And with his background, he thought, I could probably design a secular program that would really allow individuals to kind of empower individuals to use these practices, these mindfulness practices, to kind of shift their relationship with their bodies, with their thoughts, with their feelings in a way that could potentially have this outcome of being able to help them live with this chronic pain. And so that's what he did. And so now it is taught all over the world. There's a wonderful documentary, if you search on YouTube, I think it was created in the 90s with Bill Moyer. But if you search it, it shows they went to UMass Medical Center and they interviewed John and interviewed the patients, and really kind of you get a sense of what the program was like when it was first getting off the ground. And it is not, the people engaging with these programs are not seasoned meditators. In fact, there were probably a lot of individuals who were skeptical and weren't sure if what they were going to get out of that class. And so it is so brave to see them kind of engaging with that content and being able to work with it in a way that actually really changed a lot of lives. As I said, it is evidence-based. It is actually the most studied of the mindfulness-based programs. And so now the evidence behind it is really pretty strong. It is really strong. And as I mentioned, there's been even a number of systematic and literature reviews conducted on it. And so encourage you to kind of check that out. All right. Let's see. Yeah, so a bit about the actual structure of the program. I'll talk a little bit on the next slide, but this is a class on actually all of our mindfulness-based programs. It's really nice because you get a good introduction and foundation of both what we'll call formal and informal mindfulness practices. So the formal practices are probably more what you think of traditional meditations, guided meditations, where you, for example, you'll learn a body scan where you systematically are asked to kind of lay down and kind of go through different parts of your body and tune in, do that attention control, and actually tune into what the sensations are at each part of your body. And so for many individuals, they live mostly in their head. So that idea of the invitation to actually spend time in training and practice noticing what your bodily sensations are. And it's done in a safe, systematic way, that practice can be really powerful. And then, so there's a number of other guided practices that you do. And then conversely, you'll also be trained in several informal mindfulness practices. As I mentioned, mindfulness is an innate skill. We're all born with it. And so what does it look like to actually practice going about being present in the present moment as you go about your normal routine? So you'll be invited to take a mindful walk or eat a meal mindfully or brush your teeth mindfully. And so again, it's just about kind of doing the reps and getting that practice in, and that you can, through that practice, it becomes more natural to be present. I also like to just point out it's not group therapy, so you will be in a class. Usually our classes are around from like 20 to 30, 35 individuals. It's so large enough that we do some breakout sessions. There is group engagement and dialogue and stuff, but the dialogue is always centered around your interaction and experience with the mindfulness practices that you're learning. And it's not about, like, you don't have to share personal things that are going on, although some people do, because it obviously impacts that. But it's really come as you are, and share what you want. Okay. So here are the specifics. So you can find all of this online. So you find it is an 8-week program. So you have an orientation session, and then you have a week off because the teacher in that week off actually will meet one-on-one with all of the students. It gives the teacher a chance to get to know you, what you're hoping to get out of the program. And that way, when you show up to class on that first week, the teacher can actually more effectively teach to that specific class that he or she has in front of them. And so we are offering 5 MBSR classes this fall. We try to mix up the days and times of the week so that you have some options. And as I mentioned, if you are local to Rhode Island, we do have an in-person offering. It's going to be on Wednesday evenings, 6 to 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And so the class itself meets for 8 weeks. You come to class once a week, and it is 2.5 hours per class, which is a lot, but it's quite intentional. And so I have taken MBSR twice, and the first time I took it, my background is in public health. Worked in running different clinical research trials for more than almost 2 decades, actually. And so when I was gearing up to run a clinical trial on a mindfulness-based program, I didn't have a lot of background in meditation or mindfulness. And so my boss at the time said, you know what, I'm going to send you, you should go take MBSR, because you should know what these programs are like. And so I went. I would say I was open to it, but skeptical. I really didn't know what to expect. And it was so interesting. It wasn't until after the program it was nice. I thought the teacher was wonderful, the people were wonderful, but I really was like, I don't know what I'm getting out of it. But it wasn't until it actually ended and several weeks kind of had passed that people around me were like, "You're different." And I felt different. It was almost like it rewired my brain. At the time I had three small children. I was working full time and I was going through something personally that was extremely challenging, maybe even a little traumatic or a lot traumatic. But anyways, I was dealing with all of that, and I am a high energy, probably. I struggle with attention and focus, and so it's almost like going through that class. It really did feel like it rewired my brain. I felt less reactive in my relationships. And also less reactive to distraction. Instead of like ping-ponging around with different input, I would be able to have a little bit longer focus. It also felt like the world kind of slowed down in a way that allowed the priorities in my life to bubble up, and I could make more informed, more value-based decisions. And so that was my experience with taking MBSR for the first time. And we hear this a lot of that anecdotally from our students as well. And then the research also seems to back that up. And so then my second time taking MBSR was just recently, a year ago. I took an in-person offering, and again, it's just completely different. At that time, I had been around and been working in the field of mindfulness for a while, strong proponent and believer in it. But what I got out of that class that was so powerful was just how powerful it is to be in community, particularly in person. For that one is quite nice, and to be able to have, kind of walking through that journey together with other individuals, kind of this shared humanity, and just really appreciating the vulnerability and the intentions of the individuals that I was taking that class with. It was really powerful, and just what I needed at the time. So there's the schedule, there's the tuition. If we do want our programs to be accessible for everyone. So we do have a tuition assistance application. I could put the link to that in the chat. So if the tuition is out of range for you, we do offer tuition assistance in the form of discounts, and also the option for extended payment plans, usually up to 50%. We usually more in the range of 20 to 30% for those. Okay. Oh, the other thing I just was trying to, in my long rambling stories, was to say the 2.5 hours is a lot. What I found is that it really, even if you don't practice outside of the class, even if you don't continue to practice after the class is over, there's something about, and the research suggests this, putting apart that time. First of all, if you're like me, if you schedule it, you're more likely to commit to it, especially if you paid money for it. So just being able to like show up to class and then having that amount of time to actually practice and engage with the meditations and the practices, that alone the research shows has an effect. And then if you practice outside of class, or if you continue, obviously the effects are that much stronger. So that is why it's 2.5 hours. You spend a good majority of that time actually engaging with and learning and practicing the different mindfulness practices. And they don't just jump into hour-long meditations. There's like a really thoughtful sequence to it all. So in the beginning, you'll be doing like more 10 to 15-minute sittings. And it can feel really uncomfortable. You sit there and I remember taking the recent class and being like, oh, I'm out of shape, I'm out of practice. I'd sit there for 15 minutes and it was like just like antsy in my seat and feeling like when is it going to end, but still practicing. And then by the end of the eight weeks, it's amazing. I found myself sitting there for the 40 minutes and it felt like it was 5 minutes. It's a little bit of a time warp. So it definitely is like training your muscles at the gym. The practice does pay off. Okay, so I'm going to go through these ones a little bit more quickly because they're all based off of MBSR. They follow a similar structure. So mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, is an evidence-based and experiential program, an adaptation of MBSR that combines training in mindfulness meditation practices with principles and cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's the most well-known and studied adaptation of MBSR. And it was created to help participants break free from patterns that contribute to repeated and prolonged episodes of depression. It was first created for individuals struggling with depression, but it's also been shown to work with anxiety and other difficult mood states. So what I like to say is MBSR is kind of like the broad swipe at a lot of, it has been shown to help with a lot of different things, physical and emotional conditions. And whereas MBCT is more of like a spotlighted, focused practice where you're going to learn a lot of the same techniques, but you're going to take those techniques and you're going to apply them more to patterns and thought processes and patterns of behavior that contribute to repeated depression and anxiety and difficult mood states. So if that's something that you struggle with, this might be a better fit for you than from MBSR. But MBSR, again, with the broad swipe or stroke, it does have effects of impacting and improving depression and anxiety as well. Okay, so MBCT was created by Mark Williams, Zindel Siegel, and John Teasdale at the University of Oxford Mindfulness Center in the UK, and it's taught all over the world now. And they are actually celebrating the 30-year anniversary of MBCT next week, actually, is the conference. And so we have the director of our MBCT teacher training pathway, Patty Holland. It will be traveling to the UK to be a part of that celebration. So with MBCT, as I mentioned, it follows the same core delivery format. It's an orientation and then 8 weekly sessions that are 2.5 hours per week. It is taught online. We have 2 offerings this fall, a Tuesday morning and a Wednesday evening. And then, as I mentioned, one of the most common questions we get is, what is the difference between MBSR and MBCT? I touched upon it a little bit today, but I always like to put this into the chat. This is this image here is taken from a blog article that one of our teachers wrote, speaking to the differences. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Okay. So the next program I'm going to talk about is called Finding Peace in a Frantic World. It is an abridged adaptation of MBCT. And rather than meeting for 2.5 hours per week, Finding Peace actually only meets for 1 hour per week for 8 weeks. So no orientation, no all-day session, just the 8 weekly sessions. And so in that design, it is really intentionally allowing it to be a more accessible, practical program designed for beginners, as well as those with busy lives and limited time. So if you're not sure you can jump into a full 2.5 hours per week program, then I definitely recommend you check out this one. It was also developed by Mark Williams and Danny Penman at the University of Oxford Center and is based on their best-selling book, Mindfulness, A Practical Guide to Finding Peace in a Frantic World. And so our next offering will start up mid-September on September 24th. It will run through November on Wednesdays at lunchtime, 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, and then our mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction program, or MBBP, is an 8-week program designed for individuals with elevated blood pressure and other cardiovascular risk factors. So it's an adaptation of MBSR. And so it takes those mindfulness techniques that you learn, the same techniques that you learn in MBSR. It teaches you those, but then it takes those, and early on in the program, it actually has the participants identify 1 or 2 behavioral risk factors that could contribute to high blood pressure or cardiovascular disease. So that could be stress, poor diet, smoking, high salt intake, poor medication adherence, alcohol consumption. So you identify for yourself what might be something you want to work on, and then it uses those mindfulness techniques that you're learning, and it has you apply them to those intentions that you've identified. And so the program was developed here by an expert in cardiovascular health and mindfulness researcher at Brown, so Dr. Eric Laux. And so this program is near and dear to my heart because I actually was involved in running the clinical research trials on this study for 5 years. It was a multi-stage NIH funded study. So it's been clinically tested and shown to reduce systolic blood pressure by clinical levels in individuals with uncontrolled hypertension. And it also is shown to improve diet, reduce sedentary behavior, and increase mindfulness and self-awareness. So it's designed really for anyone with elevated or uncontrolled blood pressure, or really anyone who is health conscious and looking to adjust behavioral risk factors for heart health. And then we also have qualified or certified MBSR teachers taking this class because they're looking to go through a mindfulness-based program that's an adaptation of MBSR that focuses on physical health outcomes. And several individuals have expressed interest in wanting to be able to bring this to their own communities. Okay, so here are the classes coming up. We offer it a few times a year, so we are going to be offering it this fall on a Thursday, 4 to 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. But then we will also offer it in the winter, in Wednesday evening. And that one is actually, the winter session will be taught by the program creator himself, Dr. Eric Laux. And as I mentioned, at noon today, we will be, Dr. Laux will be giving a keynote talk on the program itself and the research behind it. And so I can share that link with you as well if you have any interest in attending. We are offering a limited time discount for this program. So it's Mind Heart 15, and that will get you 15% off the program. And while not the focus of today's session, I do like to point out we are well known as the place to go to get trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction teaching, as well as MBCT teacher training. So we have both an entry-level mindfulness facilitator credential that you can earn by taking a single class. If you're interested in just becoming a mindfulness facilitator, being able to lead short guided practices and short intro sessions on mindfulness in your communities, you can get that credential. And then we also have longer certificate pathways if you actually want to learn to be able to teach MBSR or teach MBCT. And so if you have questions about that and we have time at the very end, I'm happy to address some of those. And I can also direct you to the monthly sessions that focus on those pathways. And then lastly, we do a lot of custom work in both corporate as well as nonprofit organizations. We work with schools of nursing, departments of health. So if you work at an organization and you think that your organization might benefit from some mindfulness training, we have a form online you can fill out, and then we'll meet with you to find out a bit more about you and your group and go from there. I'll drop this link into the chat to our event page. And this is also where you can find how to sign up for today's session at noon with Eric Laux on MBBP. And so that page, you'll see periodically new events pop up. We try to offer a kind of a range of both more basic info sessions as well as webinars or master classes on particular themes or topics. And if you ever have suggestions, feel free to contact us. So one series that we launched this year, and I think we're actually just going to continue it because we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback, is our Evolution of Mindfulness speaker series. So the series kicked off with actually John Kabat-Zinn, the founder of MBSR, came and spoke back in January. And the idea behind this is really to spotlight both the kind of the pivotal researchers and mindfulness practitioners that have really kind of laid the foundation for the field of mindfulness, but also showcase and highlight new researchers and practitioners who are really changing the shape of the field and are really innovative in the way that they're going about it. And so kind of the full range. And so we do have a YouTube playlist. Let me put both of these in the chat. You can see past talks here. And then we took a pause during the summer, but we're going to be picking it back up on September 30th. We will be inviting mindfulness researcher and physician, Dr. Judson Brewer, who will be speaking on ancient wisdom, modern tools, how mindfulness meets apps, AI, and neurofeedback. So Judd has done a lot of work in mindfulness research, looking at addiction and habit formation, but also is really quite innovative in learning what the latest technology and tools are and being able to, he's not afraid to be able to like, jump into trying to find ways to integrate that and use that to actually allow folks to be able to practice mindfulness and have it be more accessible. So that's what he'll be talking about that day. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open it up to questions. I know that was a lot. Feel free to use the chat feature or the Q&A, but you can also, if you feel comfortable, you can come off of mute and ask your questions live. So I think I saw some questions in the chat, so I'm going to look at those, but if anyone wants to ask a question live, feel free to do that. Eventually integrate. Yeah, so Maggie, I see you have a question. You've said you took MBSR, which is wonderful. You're interested in taking MBCT next. You're a licensed therapist and would love to eventually integrate this into your practice. Would you suggest starting with the MBCT course or go straight to the teaching certificate? Yeah, so great question. And actually, for both of our teacher training pathways, the first requirement is actually to take the 8-week program itself. And so if you were interested in doing the MBC teacher training pathway, they're going to have you take MBCT as the first step anyway. So definitely recommend doing that. That way you get a sense of how it is different from MBSR and gauge whether or not you think it's a good fit to bring into your practice. And then beyond that, so if you are interested in the teacher training, the next step after the 8-week course is to take what they call the foundations class. And that's where you'll receive, upon taking that 10-week seminar, you'll get a credential, you'll become a mindfulness facilitator here at Brown. And so even that credential alone is designed to set you up to be able to bring the MBCT practices into your private practice and be able to bring a lot of that to your patients. So whether or not you continue to go on to become a full certified MBCT teacher, that's kind of up to you. But even just that one step we're hearing is really powerful for a lot of people and practical. Okay. Oh yeah, the documentary. Thanks for providing that info, Shelley. Highly recommended. It's very dated, but it's so beautiful. It's just Bill Moyer did such a nice job. Actually traveled to UMass Medical Center in Worcester and spent a significant amount of time with John and the early patients of that program. And so you really get a sense of how different and how innovative and different it was at the time. It's such a different approach and how it really was changing lives, which is why it took off. Okay. Melanie says, I'm interested in MBCT. Will both sessions be offered? What happens if you don't get enough registrants? Also, can you offer any guidelines in how to select a course and an instructor? Great. Yeah. So I can already tell you that both of our MBCT classes are definitely going to run. One is almost full and the other one is on its way. So if you are thinking about taking MBCT this fall, I highly recommend it, getting your registration in early. The MBSR classes also tend to fill up quite quickly. So you'll start to see there'll be a wait list on things as they fill up. So if you don't see the wait list, don't worry, there's still room. And then that's why we try to offer it so many different times of day too. And then let's see. If there were ever, if for any of our classes, if we ever were gonna cancel it due to low registration, we would make that decision. We try to make that decision at least 2 weeks out, and you would get your money back, obviously. Okay, teacher training pathway question. I'm gonna pause on that for a second. Okay. Blood pressure. Appear to be free. Is that true? Okay. So with regard to the webinar this at noon today, the talk itself is free. The class, mindfulness-based blood pressure reduction, is not free. So that is a paid program. But the webinar, Eric's going to present on the class, the techniques, the thoughts behind the creation of the program, but also on the research and the evidence behind it. So if you're just interested on the topic itself, that's a great session to get a sense for that. And then if you wanted to take the class, you'll also find more information on that during the webinar. Okay, back to the teacher training pathways. Before I answered that question, does anyone have a question that they would want to ask live? Not to put you on the spot, it's a bit of a quiet group today, which is fine. All right, teacher training pathways from Brown. Is it mandatory to get the MBSR course from Brown or not yet? MBSR certificate somewhere else is considered. Okay, so great question. For both teacher training pathways, you do not have to take MBSR or MBCT, the prerequisite program with Brown. There are a lot of other organizations out there teaching those 8-week programs. And so if it works for you, because it's more affordable, or you know the teacher, or you have whatever your reasons are, feel free to do that. The only requirement we have is that just make sure that it's a live, it's taught in a live synchronous format. So there's some programs out there that are asynchronous where you kind of work out through the course and it's self-paced. And so that's vastly different to our teacher training pathway. So for that, it would not count. The other things to consider is some of them teach like adaptations of it where they reduce it. They boil it down to like an hour instead of the 2.5 hours. So again, if it's vastly different from the original like how John created it with the 8 weeks and the 2.5 hours, if it's vastly different from that, you might want to shoot us an email or check with us first just to make sure it would still count. Okay. Oh yeah, let me drop in some of the links I promised. So like the tuition assistance, I'll pull that one. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. So that's that. And oh, and the other nice thing, so if you are interested in teacher training, definitely highly recommend signing up for one of the monthly info sessions specific to that pathway, because those are taught by our teachers. And they are going to be able to give much more nuanced feedback and answer questions in a way on the program that I can't. And you also get a chance to meet the teachers and see kind of what their style is. But they also, let's see, they also offer advising sessions, free advising sessions. So you can sign up for like a 15, 20-minute session. So if you either are thinking about enrolling in the teacher training pathway or are already enrolled but have questions, you can use these advising sessions just to basically check in one-on-one, go through like who you are, what classes you may have taken, see if you might be a good fit. And also they can help you map out the training, because with our certificate pathways, it's not like you pay all at once for the full thing and then you work your way through it. It's kind of pay as you go, so it can fit with your schedule and your budget. And so they'll be able to look at the full pathway with you and figure out like how realistically, how long it might take, as well as give you some advice on just pacing yourself. Hopefully my links are working. Please share a link for the pathway info sessions. Yes. So the pathway info session you'll find on our event page. Let's see if this works. Yes, so you should see, I'm going to add some of our October, November dates need to be added, so we'll get those up there soon. The other thing I could do with you, if no one else has any live questions, something I like to do is just kind of walk you through our website so you can navigate a little bit more easily. So let me share my screen. So if you go to Brown's School of Professional Study website, this is what it looks like. And might not be obvious, but under academics is where our mindfulness education unit lives. So if you click on that, this form will allow you, if you know you have a particular program of interest and you want to start receiving more information on that program, you can fill this out and you'll be added to that listserv. So then below, here are the 4 short 8-week courses that I talked about today in today's session. But then here is more information about teacher training. So there's that mindfulness facilitator credential I mentioned. That's just one class. And then the longer teacher training certificate pathways are here. There's the form for the custom mindfulness offerings. You can fill out and we'll meet with you to find out more. Links to the updated speaker series, as well as past talks that we've had, the recordings, you can find those there. And then the teachers like to periodically, they'll post blog articles about topics, highlight different research that's being done. We put out every other month, we send out a newsletter. It's a joint newsletter between the School Professional Studies mindfulness programming that we do here, and then the research that's done at Brown. So that newsletter, we try to spotlight the latest research, highlight spotlight a faculty member, and then be able to provide some programmatic updates as well. So that's kind of the main page. And then you'll see on the left-hand side is where links to some of our resources. Here's the advising sessions I was talking about for MBSR and MBCT, the one-on-one. You can schedule something there to meet with someone. And then here's our events page here. And the teacher training pathways, they have their own pages with more detailed information. There's a really nice table that you can actually see the pathway and what classes would need to be taken. And then there's links to the registration directly from that as well. Here's that mindfulness facilitator credential that you would get after the first course. So that is that. And no, we're coming up on the hour. I'm happy to stick around if there are more questions, but otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Feel free to log off, and I wish you well with the rest of your week. Thank you, everyone. Bye.